John, congratulations. Labs.
Yeah, this is one of the coolest things. When I got that email from you months ago, I got it in the middle of the night, I believe, because, our time differences are so off, and I read it and I don't think I could go back to sleep. I've been using Labs. I don't know how long it's been out, but I remember getting that when I first shifted from kind of being a music producer of indie bands in Dallas to kind of shifting into composing. I got contacts, I got the Native Instruments bundle, and then I found your site through your studio construction videos that you made. Because I was kind of doing the same thing at the time, and then found that. I have every one of them from the old days on my computer, and so to think that this little sound of mine is going to be part of that is really, really cool.
Oh, it's such an excellent sound, and it's so popular on Pianobook. But one of the things that we really struggle with Pianobook is this lack of a universal kind of sampling platform. So it's kind of nice for us to get it off Contact and off, there's a lot of stuff on Pianobook, which is the Logic sampler, and onto just a plugin.
Oh, it's so easy to use, and the simplicity of it. And you've mentioned before, just the access that people will have to it, and not having to go through that really expensive entry level into Contact is really is exciting.
What's quite extraordinary about Labs, since we put it onto its own plugin, is there's now just under 1 million users of Labs worldwide. So there's going to be a whole bunch of people who have never heard of Pianobook before, which is really exciting.
I'm fascinated by this ability to connect with people and their sounds, and you gave us kind of a platform to say, we're going to make the best sounds we can make, but they don't have to be the most perfect, beautiful, tidied up sounds. They can be raw, and they can feature our cheap mics or our expensive mics in our rooms, and they all have a really interesting personality. And hearing those stories from people, that makes it so much more special.
And I think that what's really interesting about it is you're playing people playing their instruments often in just their rooms, in their houses and stuff, heirlooms, grannies, pianos. And I think there's a real romance in being able to play just ordinary instruments with, dare I say it, ordinary players.
I hope you'll see in the next week, I've been making this video about the flute and the origins of it, and Vernon, the man who made it, and seeing him sitting in his shop and knowing where this flute came from. It just sounds different. To me, it sounds different. In my brain, when I can see all that and hear all those stories, I'm connected to those sounds. And that's, I think that's why I'm so drawn to it. When you first mentioned, I think you said the romance of sampling, I thought, romance of sampling, huh? And now I totally get it. And I tell my friends, and they look at me the same way, like, John, it's just a sound, man. No, you wait. You listen to this.
Have you heard it on other people's productions at all yet?
I have. I've had some people send them to me. Some of the guys that I kind of collaborate with on some of my production music projects have used it, and but no, people all over the world have sent me stuff. But that's absolutely been the coolest, most overwhelming part about the whole deal. Pianobook and making videos is this connection to people. In their broken English, they send to me and they say, I know this doesn't probably make sense, but I want you to listen to this. That never gets old.
No, absolutely. And are you a flute player?
Absolutely not. I should have learned a few things since I did it, but no, I just know enough to get a basic sound. And if you listen to the outtakes, it's horrendous. I'll put that on my list of things to learn how to play, actually.
But for people who haven't delved into sampling, the idea of playing an instrument that you haven't learned how to play seems like an odd proposition. Why? What drew you to the idea of playing a couple of instruments that you weren't maybe proficient at?
I just divided it into two completely different types of sounds: an aggressive, scratchy. Forgive me. What do you call that on the violin when you make it sound scratchy and edgy?
Sulpont.
Okay, I don't even know if you'd call it that with me. It was painful. But then the flute is this beautiful round, and I like to write in the key of D a lot, and I asked him to make me one that would be in the key of D. And it stretches down nice and low, and it's got a nice warm tone. And so I thought, well, if I put these two things together and I manipulate them through some reverbs and things, then maybe I could get them to sound like it's one thing, and I could get the close aspect that I wanted. I've mentioned in previous things that, the Olaf Arnold's chamber waves were a huge inspiration to me, but a lot of the music that I write is kind of tight. I'm in this room, so I put the mics close. I was finding that those sounds were so big, they made me want to move my productions to match that size. So I wanted to find something that I could bring closer to me that still had the same evolving effect. And so that's what led to me thinking about doing that. It was a replacement, but also a way to shrink it and put it into a smaller space.
I often describe it in photographic terms. It's like getting the aperture correct. And I think that's the thing with samples, is they tend to, because of this duplication you have by pressing, when you're pressing two notes, you're doubling the number of players and the number of microphones and the number of rooms. They get really big really quickly, don't they?
This seemed to handle that a little bit better because everything was so close and there wasn't a ton of room. So it's one of those things where I would have recorded it in a big room if I had it, but I don't have it. So you just go with what you've got.
Now, you mentioned you moved from producing bands and stuff into production music. Is that correct?
I started my career in music, producing bands in the Dallas area after college around 2002. And I did that for a while. And then I'd always played a lot of different instruments out of necessity. If somebody comes to you with $300 and they want to record a song, and they can play the guitar and the vocals, so you got to figure out the rest if you want to make it big. So I kind of developed my jack of all trades, master of none, skill set over the course of doing that. And then I think I got to that point in my early 30s where I wasn't connected to that world where you have to go out and meet bands all the time. And I was about to get married, and I just happened to meet someone through a recommendation that owned a production music library, and they set me off on writing music. And I've shared this story on my channel, but I sent him a bunch of music that I thought was production music, and I even gave it a funny name. I forgot what I called it. Moody Grooves is what I called it, and it was horrific. I listened back to it. It was just like little pieces of stuff, but I gave him one of my personal singer-songwriter CDs, and he goes, "Okay, this is where we start." He helped me write my first album, then the second album, and the third album, and then I think it was that second album where he had me kind of branch out into some different sounds. And that's when I started the look, hunting for, one, the knowledge that you guys helped provide for me, and just the overall, sounds. If you look at my Spitfire account, you can tell where my money has gone over the past 10 years.
You mentioned earlier that we share this kind of idea of the romance of sampling. I mean, aside from sharing your samples, if you're just sampling for yourself, why is that something that you'd recommend maybe younger composers getting into?
I mean, there's so many reasons. But one, we all have things that we want to hear. And that person, whether it's in Air Studios or whether it's in some other studio where they're creating these samples, well, they had their way that they wanted things to sound. I kind of know how my mics work. I kind of know the sounds that I want to get. And I could put my stamp on it, my take on a sound that perhaps someone else would not have done. It opens up things that you would never expect, and it makes you think about the way you record instruments better or in a different way. It's really, really, really cool to share these sounds with people. And I mean, that may not do so much for your personal music, but for your life. You can connect with people and musicians all over the world, and that, we've lost in a lot of ways, one, due to the pandemic recently, but even before that, this kind of idea of us all collaborating together in one room and making music. And this is a completely different way for me to connect and collaborate with people all over the world. And it's just a different way to think about it. And you only need yourself to do it. You don't need a lot of people around. If you're just getting started, you may just have a microphone and yourself and an instrument. So it's a good way to practice.
Well, congratulations again, John. And thank you on behalf of the Labs community and on behalf of the Pianobook community. How can people find you? You've got a YouTube channel, but also maybe you've got a website as well?
Yes, johnmayermusic.com. So it's not spelled like John Mayer. You can now find me. Like if you Google me, sometimes I pop up. 8 John Mayer, and then you find me. So just look, I look kind of hard, but John Mayer Music, and I've got music out there on Spotify and those kind of things. But from there, you can find your way to all the other places where my music can be heard and videos can be checked out.
Great stuff. Well, thanks again, John, and brilliant to see you again.
Same to you. Thank you.